All right, we're going to get started. Sorry we're a little late. This is a big setup here. So welcome. So this is going to be a live data collection and analysis. What we want to try to show here, for years we've been doing these sort of talks, talking about games, talking about data. Very few people actually get to see it unfold and happen. Now this is going to be relatively short and sweet. It's going to be a fairly concise setup here. But we wanted to try to do a little something more than what we typically do. So first I'm going to show you the game that we're talking about. Now this game was built in collaboration with the textbook publisher W.W. Norton. They paid us to build the game, they own the game, and they distribute the game nationally. Sorry. Thank you.
We're building the first.
Let's start over. Thanks, David.
Narrative-driven full video game intended for use in a non-science major astronomy.
One of the things that we try to do in constructing the game is that the objects that the students will visit are all actual scientific objects that exist in space that we understand at some hopefully fairly fundamental level, and we take that actual data and build it into the gameplay.
The idea behind our game is that why not just make the rules that you have to learn be the real rules of astronomy, the real rules of physics. So we're using this natural process in playing a game of learning its rules in order to be successful, to have students understand that there are and engage with the actual rules of the universe we built on.
Our goal with this game is to teach this quantitative reasoning in a very intuitive way. What we're doing within the game is we're building in this very natural progression of the way that we teach students in the introductory astronomy class. We're building that natural progression into the game by getting them this series of tools that are based upon these fundamental physical concepts, and then forcing them to use these tools throughout the game.
So that's the game. So I'm Mike Beall. I'm the director of Gear Learning. We're a game development studio here on campus, and our chief technologist, Greg Vaughan, who built all the infrastructure for this game, had a family emergency last night and can't be here, so we're ad-libbing with our amazingly talented group of game developers here. So we'll have John Krusevsky and Keith Decker here. Also like to introduce Mohammed Akanda. He's an incredibly brilliant data analyst that's actually been combing through, well, at least to my eyes, lots and lots of data. My understanding is there are actually much larger data sets, but it's not my space. I also need your help. We're going to need 3 players to come up and play the game over at that table. And we're going to look at how you play the game. Our astronomy faculty, who was supposed to be here doing this part, actually got pulled away to go work on some stuff at the European Space Union Gaia project. So apparently that was cooler. So I'll be sort of narrating this sort of process that we're going to go through, and then I'll also be pretending to be an astronomy faculty. So hope I do all right. Then we'll have some time for Q&A at the end. So real quick, so we started sort of as GLS. My first job was at the Morgans Institute for Research. Our job was to make science digestible for people who are not scientists. We then went on and merged with Learning Games Network, had a studio here in Madison, then one in Cambridge. And now, like I said, Gear Learning, we're at WCER, we're in the School of Education. We're game designers, but our backgrounds are really rooted in academics. We want to know our stuff is working. So it's really a great marriage between learning sciences and game design. We've designed Virulent, which is systems biology, immunology, virology. Fair Play, it's about implicit bias. Progenitor X, about induced pluripotent stem cells and regenerative medicine. Crystal Cicador, if If you were in the last session, you just saw there's some amazing, amazing research that's done in that game over the last 3 or 4 years. OzTalk, which is currently an exhibit out at the New York Hall of Science, and then Econauts, a game about ecology, just to give you an idea of some of the areas we've worked in. So astronomy, this was definitely unique. It's the branch of science that deals with space. So that's a lot of stuff in space. And one of the things that we uncovered was that in any intro astronomy class, it's taught very differently depending on who your instructor is. If your instructor has a background in planetary sciences, you're going to get a lot of planets. If your astronomer is a cosmologist, you're going to probably be talking a lot more about these massive scale structures like groups of galaxies. And so it varied widely. And so what we tried to do was build a game that talked about the relationships between these different objects and give the instructors the ability to let people play in this space and understand the relationships. This summer, for the first time ever, because of this game, the astronomy department launched an online version of Astro 101. And they used the game as the core curriculum, 103, sorry. And so we're going to be looking at that data soon and see how it was used as an online game. So here's a quick example. What you're seeing here on the left, we're looking at light. We're very careful with the images that we chose. The prism, we're showing the object we're looking at. You know, a button. So much went into this game, even what word shows up here. Measure. It's not scan, it's not view, measure. So we were very careful with every little minor detail here. Then over on the right, you can see we're looking at a spectrum. And you'll see in a minute as people play through the game, one of the things we're tracking is when we ask the player to do something in the game, are they choosing the right tool? If we want the player to know something about light, and they're choosing a tool that might deal with gravity, that could be an indication that they might not be understanding what's happening. Here's another quick tool. Anyone know what this is? Any physicists here? No.
Looks like Kepler's third law, or a derivation of Kepler's third law.
Yes, it is Newton's version of Kepler's third law. It's one of the things I learned during the process of this game. And what it's talking about is apparently a highly debatable part of astronomy. It deals with binary asteroids. And I loved being in the room when scientists started arguing, what are the merits of using Newton's version of Kepler's third law when talking about binary asteroids? And I'm going like, I don't understand any of the words you just said. But I now understand it. And what you can see here is we're highlighting certain variables, and everything correlates by the color. And the idea is that someone who is a non-science major taking this class will know a little bit more, not about doing the math, but how the math works. That's a very big distinction there. Some of the obvious challenges. So basically, we learned a lot when we did this. We tried to basically recreate part of the universe and put it in an iPad, which was a monumental undertaking. We grabbed data from the Simbad database, so we had the actual data, but the game engine couldn't handle a lot of decimal places. So we had lots of floating point issues for those of you. I mean, there were some, we definitely would do this a little differently next time around. And then the representation of data. If you ask astronomers how accurate do we need to be, accurate, all the way accurate, 100% accurate. But do your intro students need it to be that accurate? Because remember, we're talking about the concepts, the relationships. We're trying to maybe get them to become interested in something they otherwise weren't interested in. So it becomes a really interesting place to talk about things. And then collecting data. This is really getting to what made this sort of different than what we had done before. And so through W.W. Norton's learning management system, instructors are using that system to see if players are learning, or they should be. They have the ability to do this. That's a whole different topic altogether. So I'm going to turn it over to Keith. Keith is one of our very talented game developers to talk about SPROCKET.
So actually, should we get our audience members acclimated to the game as I go over this?
Not yet.
Oh, fair enough, fair enough. All right, so I'll be talking about SPROCKET. That's our data collections system solution to the problem of collecting the data. So there's a couple of other existing systems about data collection, but they're not really quite up to snuff to what we need out of them, what games need out of them, and that's part of one of the reasons why we built the system. Things like Game Sparks, we've tried that, it didn't work very well. We've tried Google Analytics, we've tried Adage. They work for data analytics, but specifically for games, there's a certain amount of flexibility that is needed. So how do we get the flexibility? One of the ways that we did that is we have a node network. So we've got all of our separate pieces of the puzzle, each in their own little place, and they can be added and removed to projects on a project need basis. One of the most recent examples of a module that we created specifically for a client was a file management system. So that could get tacked in and be fully integrated in the systems that we have in the already existing. Integration, so that's integrating with the systems of the institutions and stuff that we're going to be that we work with. We've got an authentication module that can help connect with any different user management system. So if you've got a company and you've got your own user system and user data and user connections, we can actually integrate with that and work with what systems already exist. And another thing is scale. We keep the things separate, like I said, the different modules. So if a project has a specific need set, we can execute on that. If we find out later in development it needs more functionality, we can build a separate model and add that into there as well. And because we have these as separate modules, we can keep project data separate from the systems that we integrate. And that makes it so that if we do iterative development and add things more as things go along, it makes that process a lot more smooth. And another thing, so visualization and administration of the data. One system that we have is our dashboard system. We've got that to help visualize the data so that it's more parsable, more understandable of what exactly you can infer from the data that we've collected for your game, as well as the administration. So we can have, on a per user basis, access to different information. And if you've ever worked with these systems, you'll often find a situation where you want certain administration accounts to have access to certain sets of data and other administration accounts to have access to other sets of data. So this kind of helps us accommodate that need. And real quickly, just a general overview of the way that this system works. So we've got the game client. That's the game in all its glory, whatever game that it is. And then we've got our module set. So this is our data collection system. Each of the different modules, again, like I said, they can be added and removed on a per need basis for the project. And then we can export that and communicate it to the external client. So any existing systems that you guys have, we can integrate into it. So those are some of the merits of the data collection system that we've built. And one thing, it gives us a little bit of an edge of using our system as opposed to some of these already existing solutions that are not quite up to snuff for the task.
Awesome. Perfect. Mohammed, you're up.
So I'd like to explain first why we need the data analytics. So every game has some purpose or objective, and we need to measure them. So how do we measure them? Probably data analytics helps you to measure those things. So this is the main theme of data analytics right now. So in gear learning, like we have games that have some learning outcomes, and then we need to measure it. Think about we don't have any data analytics or the back end system, the SPROCKET. Back end system to use it is very difficult to know the game we develop is that meeting the goal. So that analysis was to measure and quantify line. So another thing is important is also to measure the accuracy. So what time they like to play, what day they like to play, or like in which level they like more, or which levels they don't like. Those are the things we can measure with that analysis. These are everything we can get. And it has different things, like we can have those information, pass it to developer, and then develop, or we can pass it to some other things. It has some commercial opportunity if you can study the user. So the next thing is you can track the error. So I have an experience in something like that. We recorded events that has been recorded over and over again, and it doesn't make any sense. So I pass it to the development team, and they might think about it because it's not needed, but it's coming. Maybe the developer don't know. Have those feedback. So and the last thing you also want to have those feedback, and then there's the opportunity to something else. So very briefly, what are the data analytics steps? So first, it's very important to know the data structure. So if you don't know the data structure, it's very difficult to do analysis. So in game data, there are two things very important, which we say the event types and the event data. Event types are something like, you do something that has been recorded to the server. So in this game, the game we'll be playing a little later, we have 16 or 18 events. Suppose some players log into the computer, so it's been recorded. So some mission began, the mission began event occurs, and it's been recorded. There's a long list of events there, and then we record those things. So we need to have a good understanding about this data. And then also every event type has relevant data. For example, mission end event, some mission end. Is it a mission failed, or is it mission completion, or is it mission quit, those kind of things. And the next step we need to get in the data, there's a, so you play the game, data being saved in server, and then server has the API service. And API service is nothing but it is a neat and cleaner way to get data from the server. It defines everything. It gives you the secret code. It gives you the parameter setting. Suppose you need to have information for some specific student, so you can have those parameters. And then it also defines the file format. Which file format you use. You can use JSON file, you can XML, those kinds of things. So the next step is you need to clean the data. The data you got is the raw data. There's a lot of problems with this data. There's a lot of missing data. There's a lot of inaccurate data. Those kind of things. We need to clean that before any further process. Then we need to do the export analysis just to see the interrelationship between different parameters. So you just see them, how if If you change one parameter, how the other parameter changes those parameters. You just draw them out and then see. And it also gives you information about what next step you can do. And then we do the data analysis, which is a standard statistical method, like the regression or machine learning or any kind of thing. So there are a couple of challenges and opportunity also. So our data is very big. As an example, our 10-day data is something like 1 gigabyte. So it's very difficult to handle those data. You have a storage limitation, you have a time constant kind of thing. And our data is real time, so every time you measure some parameter, it keeps changing. So our program needs to accelerate to capture those things. So cleaning data is also a difficult process. It's a multi-step process, and there is no standard method to clean your data. So it varies with different data sets. The method you apply for the Cosmos game is very different than you apply for Fairplay game. And the last thing, it often happens like when the ideal situation is you have your learning outcome and then you have the research questions and you develop this game. But often that doesn't happen. So the game is delivered and then you have the outcome, but you do not have the research questions, and then we need to think about research question and then start from this point. So these are the difficulty I feel right now. That's all I have.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mohammed. So 3 volunteers. Who wants to play? All right, that's 3 exactly. Hop over to the table. Anyone want to play a game? All right. It's usually not a big barrier. So Joey, one of our amazing interns and staff, you can play up here. So I'm going to unplug my computer from here. What you're going to see is, you can go ahead and plug it. So Joey is going to play up here so you guys can see. We'll turn out the lights. Is that going to be okay for the video? Turn them down at least. And then as the games are being played, Mohammed and Keith and John you're going to see the data start streaming in. And you're going to be able to see what players are doing. You're going to be able to see if they're on task, off task. Now, please understand, this is not any kind of polished dashboard. Mohammed has built a system to do this very quickly and clean it up enough to where it will hopefully make some sense. I need this. And so I'm now going to, while we get set up, I'm going to put my pretend astronomy instructor hat on. All right, so it's just not showing up. Sometimes these things are. There we go. All right, you get that to work, and I'll. Yeah, if this doesn't work in a second, try killing that and jumping over to. Wow, did you see that? I was pointing at the screen to tell him. Try it without. Unplug that and try it again real quick. Okay, now plug it in. So it's what it's saying is that resolution might not be. Yeah, it's displeased with the resolution. So let's. Oh, there we go. Yay. Okay, so I'm pretend instructor for the day. So first, I want you to navigate through exploration mode. So go down in your file menu to exploration mode. I'm now realizing you can't see what's happening here. Can you help them get to exploration mode? Go ahead, Joey. Go ahead. Can you progress and then accept the mission, and you can start to see things are unfolding here. I'm guessing this one's Joey.
Yes. Top left is.
All right. So now use the star chart and navigate out, and I want you to just try to find the Centaurus A galaxy. We're going to test your non-knowledge of astronomy, or vast, depending on who you are. The Centaurus A galaxy. Once you find the Centaurus A galaxy, go ahead and FTL to that location, because we totally have that ability. FTL is faster than light travel. One of the affordances we made, so that part of the goal of the game was to get people off of Earth. And realistically, the best way we could find, and this was a panel of 16 pretty prominent astronomers, finally reluctantly said, fine, travel faster than light. And we said, thank you. And we shot players out all over the cosmos. So go ahead and FTL to Centaurus A. All right. All right, so now I want you to use the spectrum analyzer tool by going into the star chart and analyze Centaurus A with the spectrum analyzer. All right, so Joey has done this, and he got a false answer on the spectrum analyzer. Now, it's false because there is no spectrum data to support that object in space right now. Because you would get such a data set that an intro to astronomy student's mind would literally explode in the room. I'm kidding. Nothing would actually harm anyone. So that doesn't work. So now instead of this, let's try using the small angle formula. Let's see if we can get an idea of how big this object is. Now you can see Joey is going to we've got a distance. He's going to drag that down. Now he's going to take a measurement. He's going to drag the answer here. Now we're going to get a diameter. Can some scientists in the room tell me what that number means? How big is that? It's bigger than Madison, right? FTL.
FTL? Oh, okay.
Let's see here. Earth is on the scale of 10 to the third radius. No, this is the sixth in radius. So that's
A lot bigger.
orders of magnitude.
All right. And so now we can see that we can see different people are in different places. And if you notice, we can look at all of these timestamps and figure out what's happening. So down to the minute, if the instructor wanted to use this in class, if I'm looking at it, and again, this is a little messier than we would typically have, but it's client specific. I could look at that and say, well, clearly student A, B, G, and R are not even engaging this at all. They have their laptop open or their iPad and they're looking at Facebook. We may not know they're looking at Facebook, but we know they're not doing this. So we can literally look at by the minute activity. So now, in your star chart, zoom out and find the Milky Way galaxy. Feel free to experiment around and see. So one of the things we're doing right now is the fidelity of data we have is not great here. Because the GameSparks and some other things that we were trying to use, they're a fantastic company. They do lots of amazing sort of monetization analytics and stuff for Facebook games and other apps, but it isn't quite what we needed, and so that functionality wasn't there. So with the new, this is not, to be clear, this is not using the new SPROCKET system. We built SPROCKET because all of the other systems didn't work well enough. And so all we can see is that they're using the star chart controller. As the instructor, I want to know exactly where is Joey going. Where are you right now, right? Because I can't see his screen. Here we can, right? So now the Milky Way, now zoom to the Orion Spur. Now locate our interstellar neighborhood and zoom into that. Find Alpha Centauri. Does anyone remember why Alpha Centauri was in the news recently? Well, within the last 2 or 3 years? Does Proxima Centauri ring a bell? Anyone? No? So they made a lot of news for a while. Go ahead and FTL to Proxima Centauri. Yeah, they think that there's a good possibility that there's a terrestrial planet, and it's very, in astronomical terms, very, very, very close to us. Something we could potentially reach in a lifetime, which is amazing to me anyway, but barring all of the other terrible things that would happen to a human being in space. But so Joey, quickly, just what kind of star is that? What would you do as a student? How would you tell what color that star is or what type? Is there a tool you could use? Joey has no idea what we're doing. I'm impromping improvising right now.
I have no idea.
So go to your star chart. Anybody have any idea what? Go to Proxima Centauri tools. So, polling the class, what tool would any of you want to use to figure out what type of star that is? Not you. All right, go ahead and try spectrum analyzer. So we have an M-type star, looks pretty hot. G-type, A-type. Just by looking at it, who thinks that's an A-type star? Why not? Why not an A-type star? Oh. You think that's it? I don't know. I'm not seeing I don't know about that. What about an M? What if I get it? Now let's see what happened. There's a tiny bit of a delay. This one will be Joey. So what we're looking at is the event type here, and I'm going to make this up right now. So what do we got here, Mohammed? The UI page deactivate event. So we're saying he opened the tool, used the tool.
This is just page.
Okay, so he used the spectrometer tool. So go back to that same star, do the same thing, and pick the wrong answer. Let's see if this picks it up.
Not a valid spectral match.
So looks like that's the fidelity that we're going to get, right? Is just that it was used. Now, this is in exploration mode. And in a minute, we're going to, time permitting, we're going to, so Joey, go ahead and restart to the title screen. So exploration mode is a sandbox mode that we wanted to give the instructors to use however they wanted. Outside of exploration mode, the primary role of the game is to have the player go through 20 scripted linear missions. So go ahead and go to mission 1. Yeah, learning to fly, yeah.
You've just spent your life savings to purchase a used second class. She's a little rough around the edges.
Welcome aboard, Commander.
Just in case does anyone know David Simpkins?
The cosmic operation.
He narrated that, yeah. He's a very awesome professor at University of Rochester.
Press the main control button to open the ship's control. The star chart allows you to observe, travel to, and analyze objects in the universe.
Pause for just a second.
Button.
So one thing we can do, so we have this actual data that we're showing, but what if we said, are students actively playing it? We can look at the timestamps and we can actually see when there are gaps in activity. So right now, if Joey's like, you know what? I need some Cheetos and a Pepsi right now. And Joey's like, all right, I'll see you later. So depending on the level of fidelity of the data, we may think, man, Joey's been playing that mission for 25 minutes. Like, what is he doing in that mission for 25 minutes? He must be really into this. Turns out he went and got some food. The game's just up and it's running. But by Mohammed running analysis and looking at those timestamps, we can see when was it last active. We can actually point out periods of inactivity, clean that up, so we're giving someone a better indication of how the game is being used. So go ahead and...
We have a current corporation contract to acquire a spectrum from supernova 1987A, confirming the presence of sodium. Sounds like the corporation is testing you to see if you're someone they'll want to give contract work to in the future. We are currently in a local group looking at to visit supernova 1987A. We need to travel to the Tarantula Nebula, which lies within a small satellite galaxy known as the Large Magellanic Cloud. Select the Large Magellanic, press zoom for a closer look. Continue
And we can actually see over here which one of the ones not getting the brilliant instruction are falling behind.
It is important to note that the Large Magellanic Cloud is at the outer limits of current FTL, or faster than light, travel technology. One day I do hope we'll make it to Press FTL to travel more than 51,000 parsecs in a matter of seconds. We have arrived at our destination. Select supernova 1908. Press the tool button. This is a list of all astronomy tools available for us to use. Select the spectrum analyzer and press
Joey, hold on.
Analysis.
Pick the small angle formula. Begin
The
now.
small angle tool can be used to determine the physical diameter of an object.
Okay, hold on
In
just a
this
second.
case, we must infer the composition by obtaining and analyzing a spectrum of the target object.
So we went through many, many, many iterations of what just happened. So how much guidance should we give someone in a linear mission? Corey, our Cosmic Operations Research Interface, said use the spectrum analyzer. Joey's like, psh, robot, I'm going to use this other thing. Do we just say, meh? Do we flash the screen red? Do we say you lose? Does your ship explode? What do we do? So we went through lots and lots and lots of iterations on this. What we decided to do was, go ahead and pick radial velocity now.
The radial velocity
All right, so
is one
hang on.
tool used to search for exoplanets. It uses a spectrum and the Doppler effect to measure the periodic motion of a star orbited by a planetary companion.
So this is what we ended up with. He's supposed to pick the spectrum analyzer. Joey instead chose the radial velocity tool. Joey. And so what we've done is, it's wrong, but we're not overtly saying you're wrong. And that's by design. We're saying what this tool does, which is not what we wanted. We want to try to confirm the presence of sodium. So go ahead and hit next.
In this case, we must infer the composition by obtaining.
And so it's saying that's not the right thing, but this other tool does. So we're trying to guide them back. Now, that is not, who would say that that is an assessment? Why is that an assessment, David?
Well, it's more enacting knowledge, and we have a super.
So we know they didn't get it right. We know Joey messed it up the first time, messed it up the second time. So if I'm an instructor, I'm looking at this and I can see he's not getting this right. Why is he not using the right tool? Joey, light! Come on, Joey. All right, go ahead with the spectrum analyzer.
Press the measure button to analyze the spectrum. We are looking for the presence of sodium gas. Here is a database of atomic spectra. To confirm the presence of an element, compare the two spectra and find a match.
Some of these, so these spectra are extremely accurate, so accurate that the resolution of this in this lighting, you just can't see these lines, but there are very subtle lines in there. We actually pulled this from some pretty crazy databases. It is extremely, extremely accurate. So go ahead and
Of sodium gas confirmed. Nice work, Commander.
we did.
Transmitting data to the corporation. Survey complete.
So here we're seeing. You would explain this, Mohammed?
Shall we explore the Orion Nebula on our trip back to the solar system, Commander? It is a little
Go ahead.
over 400 parsecs from. You can zoom out a level with the buttons on the left side of the star chart. The Orion Nebula is located in the Orion spur of the Milky Way galaxy. Now, FTL to the Orion Nebula.
Faster than light travel is very intense, by the way, clearly. So now we're looking at a little bit of data. So we're seeing that the mission is now completed. Now, right now, it's interesting. So many instructors for an intro class, like particularly at the University of Wisconsin, guess how many students are on an intro to astronomy class? Take a guess. 100? Who said that? Who thinks 50? No? Who thinks 100? Who thinks 200? Who thinks 300? Who thinks 400? Last semester, there were 362 students in the class. Who thinks that the very awesome astronomy professor, Richard Townsend, who I'm pretending to be right now, cares about anything more than whether or not they complete the mission for 360 students? He does, but he's a single human being, a great one, but he still is not going to. So right now, he cares, did they complete the mission? Yes. Next, 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 next. Jeff Barry, who consulted on the game, he's at Colgate University. Great school, 26 students. Jeff cares about, did they complete the mission? Yeah. How long did they play? What did they learn? Did they use the right tool? So we get a much more intimate experience. So it's really important that this data set and the way that we use it and give it to instructors is flexible. We've switched over to this Node.js system because of demand. Now, on the other side, as researchers, we have Mohammed. And we can look through all of this data and start to point to all kinds of things. So we're about to run out of time here. I want to make sure I give you a chance for some questions. You can kill that if you want. What questions do you have? Was this? I have a question for you. Was this helpful to see the sort of full circle? Yeah, I see a couple nods. I see a couple people still trying to figure out what they saw. Questions from anyone? Questions, critique, feedback? Yeah.
I was wondering with the further data analytics that Mohammed's doing and the whole client side of it. This isn't the tool you're saying is the finer data that you're going to be getting, right? The one you're making. What was it called again?
SPROCKET?
SPROCKET, yeah. But so the one you're working on will have more data, but then also I'm guessing that the instructors themselves aren't computer scientists or game builders or software builders. They may not be able to parse all the timestamped events and things like that. So it's going to be in a format that's somehow GUI or something like that for them.
Yeah. So what happens is right now in the current structure, and this is the first time we've tried to build a game to be implemented at scale at different schools. W.W. Norton, great company, they said, you build the game, send us the data, we will build the dashboards and get it out to the schools. They did not do a good job. It's a lot. Their people, their IT and CS people thought they had a handle on it. It turns out it's incredibly complex. So now all of a sudden you have 260 instructors asking for different levels of data. They're screaming help, querying stuff. The Amazon servers are exploding. We've got it stable, but it was a bad situation. Our new projects that we're building now, we insist, because this makes us look bad to a certain degree, right? Norton's like, we got this, we're going to own it. Cool. Well, what we're showing the instructors, there was some serious failure on their part. They learned tremendously from this experience. So did we. And so now what we do with different partners, we insist on building these dashboards and helping them implement it into their learning management system. Other questions? Yeah.
So is the market big enough for you guys?
Is the market big enough for us?
Yeah. Is it interesting? Is that 260 some instructors? Is that the right size?
So the great thing about this is we don't care to a degree. We've built many games. A lot of those games we talked about at first were for research purposes, and they sit on a shelf. We really, early on in GLS, well, at least when I came around 2009, 2010, nobody cared. Yeah, cool, we're going to research this, and then it sits on a shelf, and it eventually dies the slow, cruel death of not being supported anymore. With Norton's case, they distribute it. We built it, it's out there, it's being used, it's winning awards, hopefully helping people. So it became a different problem. So the marketing part, is the market big enough? There are lots of games that need to be built, lots and lots and lots. Textbook publishers are a source for this, grant funding, different agencies. We're now working with NASA, working at and building some cool interactives and some games for them. But we don't know. So far, we're not running into any big obstacles. Just a quick, so on that, how much money did it take to make this game? 11 developers for a little bit more than a year. How much money did it take? Who thinks 150,000? Who thinks 300,000? Who thinks 500,000? Who thinks 750,000? Who thinks $1 million? Who thinks $1,150,000? Who thinks that's shocking and outrageous? Anyone? It's a fair reaction. That is a lot of money.
You got some grants to get stuff like
Absolutely not. Norton said, "Here's a check."
Yeah, and that's what matters.
That's the key, and so now part of my job. I don't actually. The artwork in this game was actually the last artwork I ever built. That makes me very sad. But we have new artists now that are doing a much better job, and I talk about stuff. So my job is to go out and build relationships with these people and figure out, is the market big enough? Other questions? Yes. Oh.
You answered the questions.
Which?
Was that the 1 million?
It was the 1,100,000. Yeah, just over $1 million. Yep.
I'm curious, are you using Experience API or XAPI or that you refer to?
That would be a great question for Greg Vaughan, who is not here. Keith, John, Mohammed, do you guys know the answer to that? Are we using Experience API?
Nope.
We're not. A lot of what we're doing, like I said, it's very customized because we need it to be. Now, I know that we're making great strides into making this universally compatible. But what's happening is, as these different publishers, textbook publishers, are creating their new flavors of learning management systems. Universities have their own. We're actually been talking with a broader group at the University of Wisconsin, where there's this now fantasy dream, which is super exciting and mildly terrifying idea that I'm an instructor. I see my student playing in the game. I can match that immediately with the click of a button to that student's profile. Are they a procrastinator? Are they great at math? If they're great at math and doing bad in a physics game, what's happening? If they're really bad at math and doing bad in a physics game, okay. And so that's a whole different can of worms, but we absolutely need this to play nice with other areas. And so we're working on that actively. This is not a done deal. It's not in a can. It's meant to be expandable and flexible. Yeah.
So this could really be used in a high school setting as well. Right?
Absolutely.
NGSS standards. It hits a lot of the NGSS.
Yeah. So we had an amazing experience. We built this game for Intro to Astronomy class. We took it out for just the heck of it. We were invited out to this science fair at Savannah Oaks, and I think it's Fitchburg. We took it out to this middle school science fair. In the game, our astronomers said, let me ask you this, what's the biggest unit of measurement in astronomy? Light year? Parsec? So there is no right answer. Get this. In astronomers, teaching an astronomy class in higher ed, parsecs. No one uses light years, ever. If you say light year to an astronomer, they go, oh. Usually in K through 12, they talk about light years. In comic books, we talk about light years. In movies, we hear about light years. Star Trek, well, that's a whole different ballgame. But, so what happened was, kids start playing this game. And there's multiple science teachers there at this science fair. These kids become enraged. Because it says in the game, parsecs, is the way that we measure these great distances. Kids were like, yeah, what's going on here? You said, light years are not a thing? Well, it's this other, and we got to watch the kids challenge the teachers, which I think most teachers, to some degree, that's encouraged, challenging that knowledge, and where's the source for our knowledge, especially when I can get lots of stuff on my freaking watch. But kids have access to all this information, and so just knowing that our game caused those students to go to the instructor and say, hey, is this right? What's happening? Or is this game wrong? It is interesting that they believed the game over the teacher. That freaks me out a little bit.
The game cost $1 million. People signed up on it.
Yes. So Norton, part of working with us as a group in the University of Wisconsin, we said, you must give us licenses to use for outreach. So we can use it at community centers, Boys and Girls Clubs, South Madison Partnerships, UW Space Place. Getting it in an institution, I can connect you with the brand manager. And so they don't, getting back to markets, Norton is more of a higher ed textbook publisher. We got this contract because a bunch of very rich old people in a room said, maybe this game can help us sell more books. We went to them going, yeah, people aren't buying your books so much, and you know this. They're like, yeah, but the game can help that. They're not understanding the problem at a high level. And literally what happened in this company, and this is tragic, and I don't mean to make light of this, people retired and moved on. And as people retired and moved on, slightly new ways of thinking came around to where now this is happening. And Norton, this project is wildly successful. Like I said, I was at a NASA conference with Richard Barker here in the audience, who's an amazing astrobotanist. But at this NASA conference, a person at the conference who just spoke about measuring, she's a NASA staff person that measures meteorite impacts and all this stuff, teaches at Winona State, was it? Winona State University. I said, hey, can I talk with you for a few minutes about this thing? She's like, I think I know you. I was like, I am confident you do not know me. Like, I build games, you're a NASA person. She's like, no, I think I'm using your game in my class. Oh, that has never happened to me before, ever. So it's out there and it's being used. And so we're actually working with other companies and other publishers. So attitudes are starting to change. Across, I mean, some of David's work back there is changing a lot of things. So it's cool to be part of this. Other questions at all? I think yeah.
I'll just keep asking unless other people have questions.
Okay.
So I want this in my classroom. I'll say that first.
All right.
How can that happen? Sure.
So we cannot sell or license the game in any capacity. We do not own this. WW Norton owns it. So I can say, talk to this guy, and I can send you a person to talk to. And in fact, that makes us look awesome when we're like, hey, we're also getting you work. I know that they do offer like institutional discounts and they have lots of ways. Outside of that, we have licenses to use for outreach, so we could absolutely come to you, maybe, and show the game and let people play it. We just have to be careful. There's a line we certainly don't want to cross, which is, oh, they don't need to buy it. We'll just give it to. We have to watch out for that. Yes.
So in a post-book era,
Mm-hmm.
like a lot of my students, they don't want to go out, they don't want to pay an arm and a leg for the best textbooks that's going to be out of date next year. So everyone's increasingly getting digital versions.
Mm-hmm.
Online textbooks are still sticking to the exact same formula of page by page.
Mm-hmm.
So do you think computer games are going to end the post-those books altogether? Do you think there's a new type of textbook that's on the horizon?
I don't know. My hope is that games do not kill books, just like video killed the radio star kind of thing. I'm like, absolutely, that terrifies me. Books are critical. What we're trying to do is we're trying to light a fire. Light a fire. If a kid plays this game, then goes out and looks at the NASA website, then goes out and looks at a book, then goes and talks to a teacher or a scientist, that's massive victory. But we still want them to come back to the game and play with these tools. Get familiar with them, understand the process of science. Why are we looking at light? Great, I have a light in my room. What's so great about light? Right? We want to get them to think about things that they're not thinking about. Yeah.
So can I jump in onto that question? Because I think one of the merits and advantages of a book is the same merit and advantage that I as an instructor feel I have to my students, and that is I provide a structure for them to connect thoughts together. And a game is going to introduce and develop familiarity and experience and understanding, but you at some point have to structure that with other things so that you can make connections and build a framework.
So I agree and disagree with you. This game has a curriculum. This curriculum was designed by 16 faculty. I had almost no say. As a game designer, we have to build relationship content according to a curriculum. And in fact, we used Adam Frank's textbook, At Play in a Cosmos, same name. Absolutely. That linear progression. But what we do is we try to take that structure and let people bend it and play with it. We let them fail. You know, imagine figure 1.1 in the textbook that says, here's a spectrum. And this spectrum does this thing. What if I'm like, well, what if it does this? Oh, nope. What about this? Nope. What about this? Nope. This. Yes. Oh, cool. So what we're trying to do is expand on that. But I really, truly hope we don't ever replace a textbook. And we certainly by no stretch of the imagination ever hope or dream or want to replace a teacher. We want the game to be a tool for teachers to use. We want to support teachers and human beings, never ever robots, certainly not Terminators. A human being is there with all of this knowledge and this experience so they can help communicate that. If the game can help foster a relationship or communication between the subject, between them and the subject, that's a massive victory, and that's the best thing that I think we can hope to achieve. Does that make sense to answer your question? But the games and any, well, not any, there are absolutely purely explorational games. Anybody ever played No Man's Sky? I'm playing it right now. They fixed it. So interestingly enough, this game came out just before No Man's Sky launched. But we found out that they were developing it at the same time. One of the things they wanted us to do was go to Jupiter and go in Jupiter on an iPad. We were like, what's your budget again? We don't think this is going to happen. And then all of a sudden, like, No Man's Sky is like, oh yeah, we got this. We do it all the time. We're like, what? They're using different tricks, different things, but we couldn't get enough uniqueness, enough speciality with these celestial structures that was required. No Man's Sky cuts a tremendous number of corners. And if you play that game and then you look at this game, they're very different, mostly in budget, but when you scan a planet in No Man's Sky, they tell you, like, this rock, this root, this thing, and then you go down to the planet and you get that thing. Imagine looking at Earth. Earth, yeah, there's salt and water and a tree. Like, what are you talking about? Like, we're looking at a much broader set of, if you look at the spectrum of Earth, what do you get? I don't know, but I'm guessing it's a lot. There's a lot you can learn from that. So it's a very different structure. But we're trying to compete in that space. I would love for someone to play Cosmos and to play No Man's Sky. And look at those differences. Point them out. Think about them. I would love for a science teacher to go, here's a commercial version of this thing, doing all this stuff. Here's what actually happens. That'd be great. But we're over by minutes. Go.